This video is not for whales and dolphins. It's for you, because you are just like me. Average Doug Gamer here, and today we've just had 2 new characters information released, and I've got some things to say. So let's get straight into it. We'll talk about both the characters in terms of their type announcements and how we expect them to function, and then we'll discuss how their typing opens up some pretty big questions. So we had 2 agents info drops, and the last 2 times that this happened, the first 2 characters with marketing releases were the S rank characters for the upcoming version. So we can make an assumption that both Yanagi and Lighter are in fact the limited S ranks for version 1.3, and they both seem to be pretty cool characters. I know I'm on record saying that Yanagi's design is plain, but she definitely has her charm. So let's start with Yanagi. It's been confirmed that she is an electric anomaly character, which sounds familiar. Don't worry, we will talk about that later, but I imagine she'll function quite differently to Grace. So we also recently had the announcement that Bernice is an off-field anomaly applier, and in 1.2 we'll get a drive disc set added to the game that specifically buffs her because it buffs damage from off-field fire and electric damage. Wait a minute, fire and electric. So we can make a little assumption that Yanagi is also going to benefit from this set as well and be an off-field electric anomaly character, which could be really cool. In terms of how she'll stack up in teams, I imagine she'll work anywhere that Bernice would work, so disorder teams primarily where you have an on-field anomaly applier like Jane or Piper, a buffer like Seth, and then an off-field anomaly applier like Bernice or Yanagi. It feels unlikely to me that it would be beneficial to run 3 anomaly characters because I don't feel the additional disorders would be worth losing the buff, but we'll understand more on that when Bernice comes out. Of course, you could also run the 2 off-field appliers, so Bernice and Yanagi, and run your buffers as more of an on-field stun unit, so Caesar might be better in that situation, or maybe Lighter, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we're also making an assumption here based on the new drive disc set that it will also work for Yanagi, but she could also very well function completely differently to how I'm imagining. And honestly, that might be more exciting, because I think Anomaly has the most flexibility as a class in terms of what the agent can do. Yanagi could be off-field or on-field, or maybe a crazy mix of both, where she can do both on-field and off-field anomaly application, kind of like a jack-of-all-trades situation where she's good at both but not amazing, and then just becomes incredibly flexible to whatever your team needs. And that could be really interesting. Okay, before we move on to Lighter and then a rant about agent typing, this is your reminder that you probably aren't subscribed. Liking and subscribing is the best way to support small creators like me. Thank you so much for all the support so far. You guys are so incredibly cool. Okay, moving on. Lighter. So it was announced that Lighter is going to be a fire stun agent, which also sounds familiar. I imagine though he'll function pretty differently to Khalida. Now in what way, who knows? I think we're far enough away from him now to understand that everything is just conjecture and rumor right now. But in terms of what we currently have with S-rank stun agents, we have Lycon, who buffs the heck out of ice damage and a small stun window. Then we have Chingy, who buffs stun damage multipliers for the stun window and is more universal. Then we have Khalida, whose kit is more focused on increasing her days to stun faster, and then the small stun window buff. Now, I know that's pretty reductive as they all have way more to their kit than that, but just on a basic level, that's kind of what we're dealing with. Now, Lighter could fit anywhere here. He could buff fire damage, and I actually think this is the most likely, as it's different to Khalida, therefore he'd be super useful on a fire team with Bernice and maybe Soldier 11. He could focus on stunning quickly, like Khalida, or he could be more universal and buff stun multipliers like Chingy. But I think this is least likely, as they're unlikely to want another limited S-rank stunner that kinda does the same thing as Chingy. As mentioned, based on the existing information and stun agents that we have, I think it'll be most likely that he'll be the Lycon for fire damage, as in he's a limited character, he'll probably be a little bit better at buffing the fire damage than Lycon, but my follow-up thought here is that he would be way better if he did something different entirely, especially because we kinda already have stun agents that are really great, and just upping fire damage probably isn't going to be enough to compete with Chingy's universal buff. So here's my actual theory on Lighter, tinfoil hat time. And I'll say that maybe his stun buffs function differently to anything we've seen so far with stun agents, and he actually buffs something like anomaly damage during the stun window. Therefore, he would work incredibly well with 3 out of the 4 characters to have most recently come out at the time of his release: Jane, Bernice, and Yanagi. There isn't much point in Lighter buffing fire damage right now, as there isn't a fire attack agent for him to buff up that Hoyo can sell to us. We do have Soldier 11, but she's on the standard banner. And I think the only way that Lighter is a fire buff stunner is if we get a fire attack agent announced for 1.4, which could happen, and then Lighter's value could go up significantly, if that is what he does. But the more I think about it, the anomaly buff during the stun stun window, the more incredible I think that could be. It doesn't actually have to be anomaly damage boosts either. It could be huge anomaly build-up boosts, meaning it's way easier to trigger anomalies. And that can be done with just a few hits when your anomaly agent comes on field, or through the off-field application from Bernice, for example. I just really do hope that Lyta is good, honestly. In a game that's dominated by waifus, not that I necessarily mind, and I like playing the game more than staring at butts. And I do hope that our first limited S rank dude is worth pulling and he isn't just a slightly better Khalida. And on that note, we move on to the Rant. Yes, I believe that Yanagi and Lyta will be different enough from Grace and Khalida in order for you to justify getting them, if you want. Or if, as I've suggested, Lyta could be a huge anomaly buffer and be functionally very different to other stun agents. But the big question is, why aren't we filling in the gaps in the agent pool? What about an ether stun agent? Or ether anything, actually? Or what about an ice defense agent? And as I've said, these characters, Yanagi and Lyta, will probably be different enough to warrant getting, but for the average player who probably doesn't watch my videos, they will see Fire Stun and think, skip because I have Khalida, or Electric Anomaly, skip because I have Grace. And that blows, because on first glance, that is how it looks. So I guess my question of but why is not because I don't think that these characters will be good. I think they'll probably both be great and different enough to warrant pickups, but why aren't we filling in the gaps in terms of typing? Because then the value add for accounts becomes so much more obvious, especially for players who are a bit more casual. It feels to me that Hoyo is kind of shooting themselves in the foot here with the agent typing that they've decided on. Rant over. In terms of the upcoming characters and what I'm thinking of doing, as mentioned, I'm going to skip Caesar as pointed out by my helpful Discord community. We're looking at being able to get roughly one limited S-rank character per patch for free-to-play players. You should join the Discord, by the way. By that logic, I want to see how Bernice looks and plays and then make the call on her towards the end of 1.2. Following that, I'll be looking at Yanagi and Lyta, and I think if I do get Bernice, I'll have to skip Yanagi, but honestly, the prospects around Lyta make him feel more exciting right now. I know we already have a bunch of stun agents, and I've probably way overestimated his potential for sure, but a man can dream. I think though that other players will likely be on a different trajectory to me at this point in the game because they've started playing later or they've made different decisions for who to pull for, and that makes sense. But where I'm going with this is that if Yanagi is also an off-field anomaly applier like Bernice, firstly, it's pretty weird for them to run right next to each other, but secondly, the ability to do any damage from off-field is always going to be huge. So right now, we know that Bernice does do that, and Yanagi might do that based on the information that we have. My advice here is that if you are a free-to-play or low-spend player, you should consider adding one of them to your team. It might be that one turns out to be better than the other in the future, so we can't plan for that right now, but what you can plan for is putting some polychromes away for the potential that either one of them is really, really good. And the benefit of them running next to each other, which was not announced by the way, I'm just making an assumption as her details were released first, and that's the way it's worked on the previous two banners, but provided that Bernice and Yanagi are running close together, we should get more information on Yanagi while Bernice is still on banner. So you should have plenty of time to make the call, provided that you are patient. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. The more I think about it, I'm actually really excited to learn more about Lyta, and you can let me know how off the goop you think I am for suggesting the crazy anomaly buff theory down below. As always, pull responsibly and remember to like and subscribe for better than average luck on your pulls. Oh, and join the Discord. Bye.